Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, today we're talking about how you pick an FEHB plan when you are close to retirement or in retirement as a FERS federal employee. How do you pick an FEHB plan? How does Medicare come into play? What are the things you need to be thinking about to get the most out of your health insurance? Almost retired or retired, age 65. These are the sort of things we're going to dive into today. And if you are new here, so good to have you. My name is Dallin Haas. I'm a financial planner who serves federal employees and federal retirees all day long, and I absolutely love it. So let's dive right in. Long story short, let's start here. When you retire, we have to understand a few changes that happen to your health insurance when you retire. When you're an active federal employee, it works one way, and when you retire, it works similar, but there are a few key changes you have to understand. Number one is taxes. When you pay for your FEHB, again, your federal employee health insurance, when you pay for that while you're working, you get a tax deduction for those premiums. So, for example, if your salary is, let's say, $100,000 and you pay $5,000 a year in health insurance premiums, then you actually get a tax deduction for those premiums, and you only get taxed as if your salary was $95,000. Okay, but that benefit of those premiums coming out tax-free, that benefit actually goes away when you retire. So when you retire, the premiums you have access to are the same premiums that active federal employees have access to, but the one big difference is your premiums as a retiree are not tax deductible. Okay, they do not come out pre-tax. So that is one change that happens. Also, when you are retired, you can no longer use an FSA, and when you're on Medicare, you can't use an HSA. You can't put new money into an HSA, and all three of these things help you save taxes. Okay, so in retirement, there are fewer things you can do with your health insurance to save taxes. So while again the premiums you have access to are technically the same price as normal active federal employees, after taxes, you're probably going to be paying a little bit extra. It's going to be okay. You're going to be all right, but just know you'll pay a little extra because of these changes. Now, one thing I want to make sure I clarify, we're going to be talking about Medicare a lot in this video. And just so you know, I'm not talking about Medicaid. We have to understand there's a big difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid are for those in the United States who are on poverty, or in poverty, that are very, very poor. Medicaid is what kicks in for them. Medicare is what we're going to be talking about today when it comes to federal employees, and most Americans have Medicare starting at age 65. Okay? So let me walk you through how, regardless of when you retire, let's say you are a firefighter for the federal government, you may retire at age 45 and you won't be on Medicare for 20 years, and that's very normal. So let me talk you through when Medicare does come into play or when it doesn't come into play. Okay? So let's say you retire and you're before age 65. If you retire and you and your spouse are under age 65, you can just stay on your normal FEHB plan. You don't have to worry or think about Medicare at all until you start approaching 65. So if you retire at 57, at 50, regardless of what age you retire, as long as you have that FEHB, you're good to go. Your FEHB is still the same. It doesn't change, except for, of course, these changes. You can keep it normally until age 65 when Medicare comes into play. Now, when one spouse turns 65, because normally spouses aren't born on the exact same day, so there's normally a gap where one spouse is 65 while the other person isn't 65. So generally speaking, during this gap when only one spouse is 65, and we're going to get to this, basically what you're going to want to do is one of you is probably going to be on Medicare, the other isn't. So what you want to do during that time, it's going to be a hybrid time where the FEHB plan you end up picking needs to work well for, again, the spouse that is on Medicare, but also for the spouse that doesn't have Medicare and just has that FEHB plan. It's kind of a hybrid approach you need to take during this time. We're going to get to what you need to think about when picking an FEHB plan during this time, but just so you know, it's kind of a hybrid time. Now, when you're both 65, it becomes a little simpler again, where you pick a plan because you're both on Medicare. The plan's can work both for you because you're both on Medicare. Okay, so those are some of the things to think about. Now, again, while you're under 65, I've actually got a video that I made for active federal employees on how to pick an FEHB plan. I'm going to link it up. When you're under 65, a lot of those same rules apply, where Medicare hasn't come into play yet. So I'm going to link that up below. If you want to see all the things they should be thinking about when picking a plan and you're under 65 for some time in retirement, I would definitely go check that out. Those are going to be more relevant for you. As you approach Medicare and age 65, these next things that I'm going to talk about are going to really be important. So you can come back, watch this video, when you approach, okay? So when talking about Medicare and FEHB, we have to understand a couple things. We have to understand that Medicare is a big program. There's a lot of pieces to it, but the most important pieces for federal employees are Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B. Now, when you approach age 65, you are going to get absolutely bombarded by Medicare supplement companies where they want to sell you Medicare plans. And as a federal employee, let me tell you, you want to basically ignore all of them, okay? Because you have FEHB, because you already have FEHB, that's going to be your quote-unquote supplement to Medicare. You don't need to buy any other plan. So please feel free, take the weight off your shoulders. You can ignore all those phone calls, all those mailers. Don't just ignore all of those, okay? The most important part is our Medicare A and B, which no one is going to sell you. That just happens. The government offers those, okay? You don't have to listen to any of these phone calls or things you get in the mail, okay? So Medicare A and B are the most important ones for most federal employees. So let's ask this question. When does a normal federal retiree, when do they enroll in Medicare, okay? So let's go over a couple different scenarios. Number one, if you retire before 65, then when you turn 65, you're able and you should jump on Medicare in most cases. We'll talk about the case when it doesn't make sense, but in most cases, when you turn 65 and you're retired, you jump on Medicare A and B at the same time, you're good to go, okay? If you are still working at 65, okay, if you're still working 65 and beyond, what most people do is they jump on Medicare A at 65, okay? Because Medicare A is free, right? It doesn't cost you anything. So that's what most people do, jump on Medicare A when they're 65 and still working. But they delay Part B because that costs extra. And while they're working, there really isn't a need. There's no penalty while you're working for delaying Part B. There's nothing like that. So most people, while they're still working, they jump on A and delay Part B. Now, the only time I'd say not to do A when you're still working is if you have an HSA, because the moment you jump on Medicare, you can no longer put new money into an HSA. So that is the one exception to this rule of jumping on Medicare A when you're 65, even if you're still working, okay? Now, once you then retire, let's say now you retire at 68, that is when people then normally jump on Medicare B as well, okay? That's normally how it goes, okay? So that is when to enroll. And normally, the enrollment window happens where you have the 3 months before you turn 65, the month of your 65th birthday, and the 3 months after to enroll in Medicare. That's normally the window of enrollment. Okay, so keep that in mind. So again, this is what most federal employees do, is they jump on Medicare A and B, and they also have their federal employee health plan. We'll talk about some other solutions as well if you don't want to do that. But again, most federal employees, that's the combination they use, Medicare A and B, and keep their federal employee health benefits, okay? So that is when to enroll. Now, let's talk about this, Medicare-friendly FEHB, okay? So some people might ask, okay, well, I know Medicare Part B costs extra, and you're right, it does, okay? And if you don't know what that costs, it does change year by year. In 2023, when I'm recording this, it's about $170 per person per month. But if you want to find the price for you, if you just type into Google Medicare Part B premiums and then the year you're watching this, you'll find it'll pop right up. And it's actually a chart that's based on your income. The higher your income, the higher the premium. So keep that in mind. I'll talk on that a little bit in just a second, okay? But long story short, people ask, okay, if I'm paying for my FEHB premiums and I got to pay extra for Part B, that's going to add up. Those premiums are going to be quite high. Well, that's true if you don't find an FEHB plan that is Medicare friendly. So the idea is that yes, we got a Medicare A and B, but we also have an FEHB plan that is friendly to Medicare, and it's going to give you lots of perks and benefits for being on Medicare. So a good Medicare friendly plan is going to do a couple things, okay? Either they're going to have very low premiums because they know if you're on Medicare A and B, Medicare becomes primary, and your FEHB plan loves that because Medicare picks up most things, and then your FEHB plan would pick up everything after that. Okay, so they love it. So normally, a good Medicare-friendly FEHB plan will actually give you a reimbursement every year for being on Medicare Part B. They're going to pay you money to help pay those premiums. They normally don't cover all of Medicare Part B premiums, but they cover a good chunk depending on what plan you have. They'll pay you different amounts, and that varies, okay? So for example, I know Aetna Direct, historically at least, has has been a plan that does that. Blue Cross Basic is a plan that is Medicare friendly, generally speaking. There's other plans that are more friendly, but generally speaking. And the reason I bring up Blue Cross Basic is we know that Blue Cross Basic is the cheaper of the two most popular Blue Cross plans. There's Blue Cross Standard and Blue Cross Basic. Blue Cross Standard is not designed to work with Medicare at all, really. They don't give you any reimbursement. It's designed to be a standalone plan. Blue Cross Standard is. And so when you're on Medicare and Blue Cross Standard, you're going to pay out the wazoo in premiums because Blue Cross Standard has high premiums, and you'd have to pay for Medicare Part B premiums, and they're not going to give you any reimbursement. So the reason I bring that up is not to say Blue Cross Standard never makes sense, but to say if you find a plan that is designed a little bit more to merge with Medicare, then premiums come down. Okay, premiums come down. It's a lot more affordable. Okay, and if you have a good FEHB plan that's designed to merge with Medicare, you got Medicare A and B. What often happens is Medicare picks up the first 80% roughly. Okay, and then your FEHB tends to pick up everything else, and your FEHB plan often waives basically all out-of-pocket costs because again they're secondary now. They've got perks for you, right? They're going to waive copays, they're going to waive deductibles, they're going to waive a bunch of things because you have Medicare. So what often happens with this combination is federal retirees go into 65 plus retirement with a great combination of insurance where they have very little out-of-pocket costs, if any, and it just is a great setup for going in life where they tend to have lots of healthcare expenses. So keep that in mind, okay? You want to find a Medicare-friendly plan. Now, if you don't know if your plan is friendly to Medicare, you can look at the plan brochure. You can call up your plan and say, hey, what are the plans that you offer that are Medicare-friendly? They'd be able to walk you through. But there is actually a new type of plan that is coming out in FEHB. That is a Medicare Advantage plan. And these plans are specifically designed for just those people that are on Medicare A and B. And these plans can be extremely cost effective. Generally, the premiums are very low, okay, very low, and they're designed perfectly to work with Medicare. That is exactly what they're designed to do. So if you are thinking about this, I would definitely look at these Advantage plans. Whatever FEHB Advantage plans are in your area, I would definitely be looking into these because these can be super, super cost effective at just merging with Medicare and saving you lots of money in premiums, okay? Again, this is a relatively new thing. We're within FEHB to have Advantage plans, but they're coming out now. Most plans are coming out with them. So you're going to want to look at this just to see, okay, how does this work? What does it cover? It's going to be something really, really important to keep an eye on, okay? So again, this is the most common combination that federal retirees have is they jump on Medicare A and B and they have their FEHB plan, okay? Now, let me add one more note to this. One of the big reasons that people do this is for a couple reasons, but first, if you don't enroll in Medicare B right when you're able to, so basically at 65 if you're retired, or let's say at 68 when you finally retire, if you work past 65, it's whatever age you actually stop working for the government, is if you don't enroll in Medicare Part B right at that time, then there's penalties if you ever want to come back in. So basically, there's a 10% per year penalty. So if you wait 5 years, if you come back into Medicare Part B later, let's say at 70 and you didn't enroll at 65 when you were supposed to, then there's a 50% penalty because 10% per year for every year you delay, a 50% penalty for waiting. So most people say, look, I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't know if I'm going to want to use Medicare later. I'm just going to jump in now, find a good Medicare-friendly plan, and things work. That's why most people get in, okay? But let me talk about one of the big reasons when it may not make sense to be on Medicare, because as a federal employee, at least as of today, you're not forced to be on Medicare Part B. That may change in the future, but you're not forced to be on Medicare Part B. So the one time I recommend maybe not doing Medicare Part B is if you have very high income, okay? Again, like I said before, Part B, the premium amounts are based on your income. The higher your income, the more that your premiums are. So if your income is very high, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, then what you pay for Medicare starts getting very expensive. Again, if you want to find the chart for whatever year you're watching this, just type in Medicare Part B premiums 2024, 2025, whatever year you're watching this, and you'll find the chart and you'll find the different brackets of income and you'll see, okay, my income's about, 200 grand. Okay, what would I pay for Medicare? Okay, and you could find. And once people get to the higher parts of this chart, it becomes extremely expensive to be on Medicare, and it may not make sense to be on Medicare Part B in those situations. But again, most federal employees aren't there. Most are just the normal, where they're in the lowest bracket for Medicare Part B, and they pay the normal amount. So most people don't have to worry about it, but I wanted to bring it up for those that might be. Okay, so last two things. I know there's a lot here, but hang with me. Last two things. So Medicare has Part D, okay? And traditionally, Part D covers prescription drugs, okay? Prescription drugs. However, up to this point, it's been very rare that it has made sense for federal employees to actually use Part D because FEHB plans actually already have drug coverage. However, with a new law that passed in 2022, it changed how Part D works, where I'm going to bring this up. If you have very high drug costs on a regular basis, where there's just drugs you have to take and they're very costly and you're paying for them on a regular basis, I would look into this, okay? I'm not going to dive into this super deep on this video because it's a big topic here, but I've actually written a whole article, and there's a whole section on Part D on how it works. So I'm going to link up the article below about all of this, and there's going to be a whole section on Part D, okay? So we'll find that section. If you have very, very high drug costs and medication costs, I'd go check that out because that is a beast of a topic, but there's going to be more information there, okay? Now, last but not least, if you are on TRICARE, for those military retirees that you have TRICARE, basically with TRICARE, they don't give you a choice. So with TRICARE, you have to be on Medicare A and B. They don't give you a choice, okay? There's no decision, there's no opting out, regardless of what IRMA is. If you want to keep your TRICARE, you've got to be on Medicare Part A and B, 65 plus, okay? So it does take the decision away, but it does simplify your decision-making process, okay? So here is the deal. I know there's a lot here. Again, there's a ton to think about. If there's any questions or things that I didn't address, what I would recommend is there is, again, the article. I wrote a whole article on this, and there's more details in there. I'm not going to cover all the details in the article in this video because there's so much. Go check out that article, read through that. That'll help you really solidify your knowledge of these topics. And if you don't have more questions, there's actually going to be another link below to actually submit questions to our firm. And we take those questions and we base our future content on those questions. So if you like this stuff, you want to learn more about FEHB and Medicare and how it works together, then definitely check it out. And if you want more information about how Medicare and what Medicare covers, the different parts, again, the article I mentioned below is going to cover more of that. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. I hope this gives you the confidence and the clarity and the information you need as a federal employee to make decisions, to educate yourself, and to be the best version of you and have the best retirement possible. So I hope it's helpful. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time.